G'day Internet. What we got here today is a rider that loves his triples but wanted an adventure bike. There wasn't anything currently on the market that fit the spec that he was after, so we got to work. We bought him an MT09 and turned it into the long-range adventure vehicle that you see behind me today. We're going to run you through all the nitty-gritty details, talk about how we came up with this idea and the spec that Tyson gave us. Stick around with us. You're in the purpose-built Moto garage and you're about to get taken through another build rundown. Tyson originally reached out to us because he wanted a custom build done on the donor base of an MT09. We sourced a late model, and during the time that we were out there sourcing the bike for him, I started asking him the questions that I ask all of our customers. What sort of bikes do you love? What sort of riding do you want to do? And what do you actually want out of this project? And through those conversations, the idea almost changed completely. Originally, we were going to take one of these and build a sort of like a street tracker, something that was a bit lower, leaner, and a bit meaner sort of on the street. But through the conversations, the idea developed and we found out that Tyson actually wanted to do a bit of off-roading and sort of take this thing on long-range adventure rides. A street tracker is no good for that sort of thing. So we ended up with this idea to build sort of like a T9. You've got the Tenere 700 built off of the 700 parallel twin, and then you've got the bigger brother, the MT09 and the Tracer 900. The Tracer is sort of like a road going touring bike, but they don't have a really hectic, gnarly off-road version. So that's what we wanted to create for him. To get that done takes a lot of engineering, specifically around the suspension. And luckily we had our mate Charlie Costanzo in tow to really help us out and get this done. So let's start there because that's where this project began. So where we started with this project was getting the front suspension sorted, and then we started to measure up and we took the rear suspension in for Charlie to work with. We always have a chat with our suspension guys before we go too deep on this sort of stuff, and I know from previous projects Charlie likes to work on the KTM suspension. Apparently it's really easy, there's a bunch of aftermarket parts for it and stuff like that, so that's where we started. We've got a KTM 1190 Adventure front end grafted onto this. So what we've done is we've pretty much fitted up the front suspension. We got a aftermarket wheel. We've got the KTM brakes, the triple clamps, the whole setup was pretty much grafted on. It took a little bit of machining work, but nothing too crazy to fit up onto the MT09. This front end gives you really good braking, the Brembo calipers and all that sort of stuff. You got twin discs on the front. The triple clamps are nice to work with, not too hard to modify or anything like that. And then the stems sort of were close enough that we could find bearings and spaces to make them fit or make what we needed. And then we took it into Charlie. So when we got there, we've actually had to lower the suspension a little bit and bump the rear suspension up. The rear suspension had to be quite extensively modified. We've got a custom Wilbur's shock in the back there that was sort of ordered to specification. Charlie made that up, and then I'll take you around the other side of the bike and show you what we did in terms of the front suspension mount. So once we got it up to Charlie, he started to take measurements, jack the bike up, working on the geometry to get it where we wanted it to be. You've got your suspension linkage at the front of the swing arm here, and the shock runs almost horizontally into the middle of the frame. You've got your airbox and all that sort of stuff quite forward on this frame, and these two bolts here link this side of the twin spar frame to the other side. In between there's a large aluminium bracket that mounts your front suspension. We needed to get more suspension travel for the shock and the linkage that we had back here. So I had to remove this, modify, and well, I had to pretty much make a new one from scratch that moved the front shock mount forward a little bit. So we've remade that out of steel, had it I had it water jet cut out and then did the manual machining myself to sort of get the threads and the shock mounts and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes it's just easier to be able to fit it up on the bike, take a few measurements, and then finish your machining. So that was sort of done between my shop and Charlie's shop. I took the mount up to him and that enabled him to get the specs on the shock, order the shock, and then we've also adjusted the length of linkage here. So you've got a set of dog bones that link the swing arm to the aluminium suspension linkage. Those have been elongated again to get us a little bit further travel on the rear wheel. So we've ended up with equal suspension travel front and rear on this thing, which is really good. When you're building these things, like often you can get lost in just making them look nice, but I really do try to remind myself this thing's got to work at the end of the day. So I'm really lucky to have guys like Joe from Ride Dynamics and Charlie Costanzo helping us out with the suspension, because to be honest, a little bit of that sort of stuff is black magic when you get up onto the pointy end of the performance stuff. Now, because of the T7, you have a heap of off-road aftermarket parts available for MT07s, Tenere 700s. So we've taken an off-road Hahn hub that's built for the MT07 and adapted it to fit our MT09 swing arm. That was a bit of a prick. There was a lot of like finicky spacings and stuff like that we had to deal with, but nothing we can't handle. On the front, again, we've just used the KTM aftermarket hub. That's a Hahn hub wrapped in Excel rim. We've got a 21 on the front and an 18 on the rear. So the back tire is not too fat, but because you got so much power and a fair bit of weight, I do like to run like a reasonably wide tire. So we're running a 150, 70, 18 on the back here. With that set, we were basically looking at this bike as a rolling chassis with an engine in it and the MT09 tank. The rest of it was up to us to build. The first sort of stop on the fabrication was getting the exhaust, because that was a piece that I had the idea to make from the very beginning. What I wanted to see was this big, angry sort of Dakar style bike. We wanted to have that sort of rally raid tower on the front, but also wanted to see a twin exhaust coming out the tail. So we got to work building the mid pipe. We've used the factory headers, the 3-into-1 that run down the right hand side of the sump. Comes past and then it splits out into two. We've repurposed these from it's not like the current model R1, but it's a late model R1 with the twin pipes up under there. So we've just taken those, remounted them for our purpose, and then built the linkage pipes that run down and then underneath the engine. So once we'd finished the exhaust, we moved on to getting the geometry right. So we had our handlebars where they were going to be. We've fabricated a nice set of heat shields. So these are just a set of oversized stainless pipes that have mounted to the header, but we've spaced them out enough so we can put some heat wrapping behind it. We use like a car builder's heat-proof shielding there, which actually does a really good job. It still gets warm, but it's not gonna burn the back off of your shoe, which is exactly what you don't want when you're out for a ride. Like I say, we had our handlebar, we had the subframe where we need it to be. So the next port of call was getting these foot pegs in the right place. So usually these things are swung way back here because you've got a really sporty riding position. On an adventure bike, I sort of take lead from the stuff that's out there already. So we're looking at the BMW GS series, looking at the T7s, and generally your adventure bikes pegs are stuck smack bang right where your swing arm pivot is. So that's what we've done here. We've moved everything forward a bit so you have a bit better balance and grip when you're riding. Used a set of Moto off-road pegs. I don't actually make them, but ages ago I convinced Devon to make me a bunch of these sets when we were filming Wide of the Mark, and I still had a couple laying around. So these are Moto unobtainium off-road pegs. Pretty cool little setup. So that was an easy one. We just had to make some brackets for the rear master cylinder and the quick shift linkage on this side. And then that sort of set the tone. We knew where we were sitting. We knew where we were going to be looking out over, so we could get the rally tower, start putting the fairings on the front, and then style this thing out from front to back. But guys, Moto have really stood behind PBM this last couple of years, and I couldn't be happier to have a partnership with those guys. They have absolutely everything you need in terms of fluids for your motorcycle and a bunch of great cleaning products as well. If you need anything of that sort, make sure you jump onto their website, find your local dealer. You can get that stuff nearly anywhere because it's not just me who loves it. Nearly everyone who rides motorcycles is really into that gear because it is good stuff. So thanks to them for supporting PBM, and make sure you go check them out. Styling work on the front. Let's run through all the little bits and pieces on this thing because there's a lot happening up here. So we've utilized the MT09 tank. That's been sort of like kept in place. It had some lines that sort of ran forward into a smaller sort of radiator shroud on the MT09. What we wanted to do was build that up into a rally tower. So we have an aftermarket kit that was built for the T7. We got this from a mob in Italy. I can't remember who they were, but we sort of just bought the CNC bracketry and the headlight brackets and stuff like that, mounted that onto our frame with some adapter brackets, and that gave us the basis in which to mount our rally tower. So this thing's not a proper rally tower. It used to be a little bit taller, so we've modified it. Basically, you've got your factory MT09 speedo and gauge cluster here, and then we've mounted up a quad lock for him with a wireless charger. So that sort of completes the tower. You've got the sort of typical rally raid dual stacked headlights here and a big windscreen, and then we've actually made some nice panels. This is probably my favorite part on the bike because of the color scheme that we've gone with. I wanted some like yellow perspex sort of high def windscreen setup on here, so we've built some brackets. These were originally made in aluminium, and then I had the shapes laser cut in perspex and sort of shaped up. We just had to get our mates at All Star Plastics. They got a plastic oven, do that, lay it over the mold that we made, and then send them back. So that's a really cool style piece. You got this nice tall windscreen, the epic headlights, and then those sort of two high def yellow windscreens is a really cool touch, I think. Sort of everything's working with a lot of sharp lines on the front. So if you look at it, there's heaps and heaps going on this thing. With the windscreen and stuff in place, I set Cody to work on the fairing. So what we've created here is a really sort of like sharp line. We carry the line of the tank, and it's also highlighted by this speed block that we've put in the paint design, sort of shapes up and around. And then this is all bolted onto the bracket here. Your steering operates within the sort of front fairing area. We've shaped up a dirt bike style custom aluminium front fender. This is a bit more of Cody's handiwork. And then I got a set of our custom fork shrouds on the bottom. That's a pretty standard part for all of our dirt bikes. It's a fun part to make if you're having a lazy Friday or whatever. You just want to knock out a bit of easy fab work, bit of pipe, chop it, weld a bracing on there, shape it out. It's always a cool looking part when you're finished. So the lighting setup and handlebars on the front, guys, we've used our tiny little Omni lights. They're super nice little bright units that we've been using and figuring out on a lot of our bikes. So those are mounted up on the rally tower here, incognito, out of the way until you need them. When you flick them on, you can definitely see them. We've used a set of our mirrors here on the handlebars, just mounted to the factory mirror mounts. Nothing sort of too special or crazy going on there. We just really wanted to make this a comfortable, functional, long-range bike. So with that being in the forefront of our minds, we had to build in some sort of crash protection and a bash plate on the bottom here. So there's a stress member frame. You got a sump and an engine just hanging out in the breeze there. So we've built some crash bars. We've used the custom bracket that we made for our mid-mount pegs and the front engine mount. So always when we do this stuff, we're looking at what's available on the market, if it's sort of going to work for us. And for this one, it wouldn't really. So the crash bars that they usually use on these things, they stick right out here and they don't link up underneath, but we needed to make something to mount our bash plate to. So we've shaped these chromoly crash bars up. They're all made from lightweight chromoly tubing, custom turned brackets, and then we've just sort of got custom bolts and stuff to the correct lengths for there. So you've got one of these on either side, and then we've built in a crossbar under the exhaust here as well. From that, it gave us the start point that we could mount our aluminium bash plate up to. So when you're doing this sort of stuff, you're always thinking about weight, but you also got to think about like the strength and protection. So it's made out of aluminium. We've used 3mm alley through the whole thing, and then we just sort of like drilled some holes through it, styled it out a little bit, but it also allows airflow to get through onto the exhaust, and anything that sort of gets through in there will sort of fall out the back just the way that we've had it designed. So that was sort of purely functional. It's a pretty nice looking part, but what we really wanted to do with this piece was make sure that it wasn't too garish and you didn't stick out all that much. And I think, you know, we've done a reasonably good job for what it is. It's like a big bulky piece, but it blends in and it looks right at home on that bike. Now, once Cody was finished fabricating and mounting all that stuff up on the front end of the bike here, I got to work on the tail. So we just got a bead roller in the shop at that point in time, so I was keen to sort of use that. I've made up a reasonably sort of like square and geometric dirt bike style tail box. It houses a tail light in the rear here. It's got the plate mount welded onto it, and then you've also got some Omni lights on that as well. When I'm finished chatting through what we've done here, I'll flick the lights on for you to have a look at that too. So we've shaped that box up. It actually mounts off a lot of the factory mounts, and then the seat latch also utilizes the key that's located under the seat. So everything sort of works as it would from factory. You got a key, pop the seat up, get to your under seat area. And then I've shaped up these sort of dirt bike style fairings. They're a bit longer and bulkier than usual, but this had to flow from the tail out over the exhaust, so your rider wouldn't have anything to get picked up on. Like, you don't want your pants getting caught on the edge of a muffler or any brackets or springs. So we wanted to cover that and make it as seamless as possible. It's a pretty bulky tail, really tough looking from the back of these twin mufflers, but again, it's got to be usable. So the way that we've mounted this and covered it in with the fairings, you've actually got a quite a slim rider's area, which helps when you're gripping off road and trying to squeeze this thing with your legs and hang on for dear life. So I'll flick these lights on so you can check it out. So we've just built a small box in here. We've got a bit of red acrylic in the lighting area, and then just blasted that so you get a bit of nice diffusion. On the back, we've got your Omni light indicators. Nice and tidy. They're not going to like hang out and get stuck on anything or brush going past and stuff like that. We've also built for Tyson a set of detachable luggage racks. So he's got a saddle bag that runs on each side, and then that forms the base for a tail bag as well if he needs it. The seat was shaped up, so once we had all the fairings on, we needed to make sure this seat was nice and level. So your subframe runs quite sharply towards the front, so we've bumped the foam up, giving him like a nice bit of cushion, and also leveling that seat out. There's nothing worse when you're on a long ride, you feel like that seat's always pushing you into the tank, exactly what you don't want. So work with timeless auto trim as per usual on this. He's decked it out in a nice gripper leather, put this yellow detailing. He was a bit weirded out when I sort of told him the idea for the seat, but when it came time for the paint and all that sort of stuff, and we mounted the seat up, obviously everything made sense, so he come around in the end. The last thing that we got done of this obviously was Justin, Pop Bang Classics. We took him the idea for paintwork, and he's mixed up this insane blue. So I'll just move this bike back a little bit so we can get a look at it from directly side on. This was one that we bounced back and forward with Tyson on a fair bit. So I was throwing him old Dakar liveries from Yamaha and sort of 80s stuff, all that really cool like Marlboro or Camel and stuff like that. What we landed on was this blue and yellow speed block. So this was his choice. He sort of wanted the plastic blue color of a modern Yamaha. So Justin's gone out and I think he custom mixed this color, absolutely nailed it. Like, it looks so factory and so flat and so plasticky. It's sort of a weird thing to look at because I know it's all custom shaped aluminium, but the finish on it's so clean and crisp. It's just like, I don't know, it's a weird thing to wrap your head around, but absolutely love the color. Justin's done really well again. Simple lines, speed block, it's all very like Dakar Yamaha. Tyson is really stoked on this. He wanted this sort of like loud, garish color, and that's exactly what he's got. So we're almost at the end of this one, guys, I promise. It's a big project, so there's a lot to get through. The performance specs on this thing. So we've got a factory engine, pretty much stock standard. We've had the ECU flashed and it's been given a tune with Jamie from Dynamite Moto up in Brisbane. We've got a DNA Performance air filter under the tank, and obviously the high flow exhaust. That was about it. On the dyno, this thing with knobbies ran 105 horsepower, which is a little bit less than the ticketed engine horsepower, but you get a lot of losses with knobbies on a dyno, so I'm told. So I'm pretty happy with the output that we've got from it. I didn't expect any insane gains, but I didn't want any losses either. In terms of the weight, we're tipping the scale at 210. I just weighed it before we filmed this clip. So 210 kg, that's about on par with the T7, but you got a lot more horses getting to that rear wheel. So it'll be a little bit more fun, I reckon. I'm gonna give this thing a start now, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. I know it was a long one. Once you hear this thing run, we're gonna chuck a GoPro on, head out for a little test ride. The boys will come and film some stuff on the side of the road, and you can really hear this thing being given the berries. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Doesn't really sound like an adventure bike.